Hello and welcome to the Atlantic Online webinar, Adopting an E-Commerce Strategy to Build an Online Storefront During COVID-19 and Beyond. You know, running an online store seems like a really great idea. Let's just take a moment and pause and think about this for a second. There's no retail space to lease with an online store. There's, no tangible stuff like carpets for customers to trip on. There are no long sets of hours that you have to be stuck behind a cash register. But remember this, even though those tangible things are not in place, the very first thing that you have to remember is that running an online store is still running a real store. It is still running a real business. So you have a lot of concerns to keep in mind. And thankfully, there are systems that we can put in place to make running an online store easier than ever before. These systems provide, the computer programs and the online elbow grease to help turn your ideas into reality. And you will provide your business the goals and the targets to guide this process. So in this webinar, I'm going to explore with you what you should consider and how this e-commerce infrastructure should work. Okay. Excuse me. My name is Shelley Bellefontaine and I own AtlanticOnline.ca. I've been a digital marketer, computer programmer, website designer for the past 20 plus years, long before website design was considered cool. I've built Atlantic Online to be a big agency alternative for digital marketing in Atlantic Canada, and we've helped countless organizations improve, establish, and grow their online positions. And we work on the business model of having a distributed network of professionals who are each, working through their own businesses, but together we come together for projects for our clients. And I'm proud to say that we do bring great results for our clients. And if you want to know more, just please visit us online and look us up for sure. Today's approach, we're going to talk about several pillars. I'm going to take you through several pillars as to what can be the basics right up to the point of building your store, to planning what has to be done, and then what you should be doing to attract customers to your new online store. But we'll start first with online store basics, in which I'll explain these concepts and the terminologies involved in the underlying structure of an online store. Then we'll get into planning. We want to plan the store, and in doing so, I'll explain how to assemble all the pieces and the parts of an online store and how you should be thinking and planning for the overall direction that the store will take. Then we'll get into the building. We'll actually go through the process that is required to design the store from concept to actual execution, and how we can build these structures for scalability, because with every business you want to scale, you want to grow. So you want to make sure that the assets you use and that the tools you use will allow for that growth. And then finally, we'll talk about the marketing, how we can bring customers to your store once it's launched and once it's ready to go. Okay. So let's just dive right into the basics of what every online store owner needs to know and needs to handle before you actually open your virtual doors to the public. So we're going to talk about how to get and what is the right domain name, because that's going to be your online identity, if you will. We'll talk about web hosting, and I'm going to caution you here that you just don't want to get, buddy's neighbor who lives across the road to deliver your hosting for you. You really need to do a sound assessment of what your needs are before you even assign a hosting account to your new online store. So we'll talk about that, as well as the different types of software that you are going to have to look at and consider especially if you want to grow your online store as well. And then the critical pieces of establishing that merchant account, and that is your actual e-commerce account, the system that kind of drives and manages your sales and communicates with getting paid. That's the important part, of course. We're going to talk about that from a basic perspective. So let's just dive right in. The parts of a domain name are really important because physical stores, as we know, have that golden rule for success, and it's location, location, location. And online stores have a very similar rule. It's domain name, domain name, domain name. And that might be my rule, but I think it's a really good rule to have because the domain name is the name your customers type into their web browser to find your store online. Even the best online stores in the world cannot survive if they have a bad or a confusing name. Okay, so do keep that in mind. And it's really important to understand the constructs here of a domain name. So let's start. We've deconstructed it into three primary parts. The first is www, and that is the server name. The three W's stand for World Wide Web, which is the most commonly used server name. But you can actually customize this with your web hosting provider so that you can have multiple URLs, such as, careers.ibm.com. and downloads.ibm.com. Those are just two examples. But think if you're a multifaceted company and, you might build and sell boats, but you also have, a paint shop. Well, you can extend your domain name to include the paint store versus your general domain name. So you want to think about where you want to position your business in time to come, and you can assign unique wwws or URLs to that as well. So do keep that in mind. The middle part is the domain name itself. That is the actual unique name that is purchased through a domain name registrar. And because it's a registrar, they're interconnected. And as a result, there will be no two domains alike. Now, that being said, we could have abc.ca and abc.com, which brings us to the last part of the domain name. That top level domain extension is the last part, and it gets registered along with your domain name. The combination of the two creates that unique reference, if you will. So there are different types of extensions. Some people will register a .net if they're a computer-based company. .ca denotes a Canadian-based company. .edu is for education. Initially, there are a slew of domain names that are released into the registrar system annually. Most recently, there's .online and .tv. They're great ones as well. But do keep in mind that .com is by default the domain name extension of choice. It tends to get the most attention for sure. Understanding web hosting. Now, when you buy a house, you get an address for your house, which is where the physical structure is located. And if you start your own online store, if you start like a regular store, you generally rent some retail space to hold your inventory so that people can walk around your shop. When you start an online store, you still need space, but this time you need virtual space on a computer that's always connected to the internet. And that space is what holds all of the text, the pictures, and the sales data that's needed for your inventory, as well as all of the software that allows people to use their computers to surf your store and buy merchandise. This virtual space is organized and known as a web hosting account, mainly because companies that own these servers are always connected to the internet, and they are offering to host your files, which will always be available via the web. Okay. Now, these accounts come with different features, and this is where we often do a lot of research for our clients to make sure that the web hosting solution matches what the client needs. So there are some very key things that we look at when we do this activity for our clients. And number one is the disk space. That's the amount of megabytes of storage space that you can use to put your inventory, your pictures, your sales data, and any other information that's needed as part of your online store. And unless you're hosting a lot of video clips or audio clips or really super high quality pictures, most online store owners typically never use up the disk space from, say, a low-tier hosting account. So at one time, disk space was very, very precious. Now it's a pretty open commodity, if you will. What is critical, however, and what's a little bit more important, is both the bandwidth and the data transfer. So bandwidth is the amount of data that your web hosting account can send or receive at any moment of operation. So think of, say, the width of the street that connects your house or your store to the outside world. The more visitors you have trying to visit you at the same time, the harder it's going to be for them to get there. But if you pay for a high bandwidth account and you only experience a small but steady flow of traffic, you're in essence paying for an 8-lane highway when, a 2-lane road will do. So we have to assess the volume of projected visitors to your site. And this is handy if you are finding that you'll be running a lot of contests, or if you have a lot of specials, if you have a few huge social following or a huge email list following that you'll be, communicating with when you have certain events happening on your site, then that's going to determine the amount of traffic that's coming in. So we do that, assessment with people beforehand. And, typically, the average web hosting server can accommodate this, but this is something that we want to consider. And also, too, where your customers are located is going to determine the width of the bandwidth that you have. So if you have customers dispersed throughout the world, then what we would do is disperse your database or your website calls to be accessible from different servers through a distributed network as well. So bandwidth is really important because you certainly don't want to have a traffic jam of people trying to get on your store. The data transfer is important as well, and while bandwidth is concerned with the amount of information going back and forth at any time, data transfer has to do with the sheer quantity of information that your web hosting account sends to all your visitors for a given day or month, as an example. So when a customer enters your store name, the web hosting provider transfers a copy of your store's homepage to the customer's computer. That customer clicks on a product picture, and then your internet provider sends the information for that product again back to the customer's computer. To get your data transfer quantity, the web hosting provider adds up all that traffic. So in a way, think of how many typical, cell phone plans give you a pool of available minutes. Well, you're allowed a certain amount of traffic. Online store visitors or cell phone calls incoming or outgoing. That would be known as your traffic. And you're charged extra if you go over that allotted amount. Okay? So that's something that we always try to do an assessment of prior to a purchase of a web hosting solution. It's certainly something that we monitor as we move along with your solutions as well. Think too on allowable languages. Okay, so online store software is written in a lot of different computer programming languages, not linguistic languages, but computer programming languages. And your web hosting provider needs to offer an account that knows how to interpret the language and run that software, so that, the provider should let you know which languages are available for their different accounts. And again, this is from the perspective of you doing it yourself and you sourcing out a web hosting provider. So you must make sure that, say, the software that runs on Java, you need to know that the account that you're choosing will actually be compliant with that. So you need to have some awareness of that for sure. You also want to look too to make sure that your web hosting provider is a reputable business for sure, and you can research that online, and you can also ask our opinion. We have worked with several reputable businesses over the years, and we've also had some negative experience as well. We'd be happy to share that with you offline and give you some guidance for sure. Okay. The next thing that we want to talk about in terms of getting the basic understanding of how to position your new store online is the software that you'll be needing. I'm going to talk, you don't have to have the intricate details of this, but these are terminologies and these are concepts that you have to be comfortable with in order to, I think, appreciate what's happening in the background. So in terms of website software, imagine that you've secured the right space for your physical store, but now you need to add the fixtures and the equipment inside the store to make it viable. And for an online store, that translates into having very specific software options that will help you manage and run your store operations. Okay, and I've broken that down into two very specific categories: the content management system, or the CMS, and the shopping cart. So in terms of the CMS, think of everything your online store is going to have in terms of information to the customer besides the actual sales data. The content of your website, whether it's a series of articles, reviews, guides, customer testimonials, your store policies, some store history, press releases, all of your marketing pieces, all of that has to be managed easily, whether it's you doing it or your employees are doing it or if we're doing it. Therefore, your web hosting provider typically have accounts that come with something called a content management system or a CMS. WordPress, for example, 30% of the world's websites are created using the WordPress platform, and for a darn good reason. It's because it has an excellent content management system. And it's a type of system that allows you to update the information on your pages without having to physically alter specific web pages or to know that deep technical information. So you want to have a system that has a very strong CMS that has an easy interface for you to use. Then we have the shopping cart. We've all seen the icon for the shopping cart icon. We know the purpose it serves, but you need to have disk space to host all of the files for your website as only the first step. Because when you want to run an online store, you need something a little extra, generally termed in e-commerce or electronic commerce or shopping cart software. And that allows for your customers to click on your online inventory items and add those items to a virtual shopping cart. To go through a checkout process, to allow them to give you their shipping information, and for them to pay. So many web hosting account owners end up wanting to run an online store. Many providers offer e-commerce accounts with shopping cart software geared to the specific setup. It's a big plus for sure. And it is a necessity for new online store owners nowadays, and we'll help you source all of that. It really depends on what your users' end requirements are. In other words, what your customers' needs are going to be. That'll determine what shopping cart option that you're going to have for sure. But it's true that e-commerce accounts can cost you a little bit more than average, and that's because you're getting more features that you absolutely need. I mean, you can't run an online store without the shopping cart software and that technology. Okay. For sure. Some things that you want to watch for and some things that we actually assess when we're evaluating different shopping cart software, we want to make sure that sufficient products can be merged from your shopping cart from your catalog. So your catalog has to be totally integrated with that shopping cart option. We also look at the number of products that can be in a customer shopping cart at any one time. Let's just think about this for a second. When you go to Costco, you don't go for just, a loaf of bread and a jug of milk. You probably go for, a huge cart full of items. Well, you know that you don't pick up a little basket when you go to Costco. You grab the largest cart that you have. Very much the same analogy with the electronic shopping cart. We have to make sure that it is large enough and sufficient enough to carry the inventory items that customers want to place in the cart. Okay. We also have to make sure that the shopping cart technology allows for pictures to be associated with each inventory item. So there's a direct correlation there, and that's going to affect the structure of that shopping cart. And also too, you want to be able to include both different shipping method options tied in with your shopping cart, and also different payment methods as well have to be supported by the software. So in terms of payment methods, you'll need something referred to as a merchant account. So once your online store receives an order, the important process begins, and that is collecting payment from your customer. In a traditional brick and mortar store, you have a cash register, maybe a credit card swipe machine, perhaps a device that might scan your customers' handwritten checks, from days gone by. But in an online store, you need an account that collects the funds from your customer's credit card company or alternate payment method. But basically, you need an account that collects the funds from your customer's credit card company and makes it available to your business bank account. And that is what is called the merchant account. So you have a couple of options when it comes to securing a merchant account. You can go to your bank, because many banks and credit unions will offer a business checking account with a merchant account, and you put that money from your merchant account directly into your bank account. Now, typically, banks tend to outsource the merchant account, so you end up paying a bit of a marked up price. They may also charge you an application fee so that they can have their third-party service check your credit, and et cetera, et cetera. So do be careful there. Make sure that their fees are not too exorbitant that you can't, absorb that. Direct merchant account providers as well, like some financial institutions, offer just a direct merchant account, and that may have more competitive rates compared to, say, banks or larger institutions. And then there are other third-party providers as well. They may charge higher fees, but that might be a solution for you. Moneris is one that immediately comes to mind. Next is the payment gateway. This is the vital link, and it is the last piece of the puzzle. It involves your merchant account being able to communicate with credit card companies so that payment is safely transferred from the customer's account to your merchant account. And online store owners typically use a payment gateway, which is a software application service that links your website to the credit card companies and eventually to your merchant account. Okay, today many merchant account providers or even shopping cart software providers have existing links or partnerships with preferred payment gateway providers. And some of them I know you've heard of. PayPal. It accepts both credit cards and PayPal account payments, and that's kind of a nice feature. I've used PayPal for clients quite a few times. Stripe is a really nice tool. It integrates very, very well with e-commerce, specifically using WooCommerce on WordPress e-commerce websites. And then That's totally integrated, of course, like PayPal is with your online service. But then SquareUp is a really nice tool as well, and that works as an excellent payment gateway option if you operate offline. And what I mean by that is if perhaps you are at you're a market vendor and you don't have your website there, and that's not how your customers at point of sale purchase your products, you can use the SquareUp tool just to run their credit card through a device that you connect to your smartphone. And it also has an online terminal as well for a virtual terminal. So the SquareUp tool is a really, really nice payment gateway. And I'd highly recommend looking into that as well. And that could be part of your scalability plan. That could be part of how you scale and grow. And you can have the SquareUp tool in addition to any other tool that might be integrated with your excuse me, with your website. So there are lots of payment gateway options that are available, and none of those should be a barrier to how you'd like to proceed. So let us move along to the planning stage. This is the fun part. In the planning, we want to talk about and know exactly what it is we want to sell. We need to have a good idea. We need to have an intimate knowledge, really, of our target market. And that's going to help us build our brand. It's going to help us make a name for ourselves online. And we're going to talk too about the types of store policies that you should have in place when you take your offline store to online, or if you create a new online. Okay? So we will go over the steps all the store owners should take before opening those virtual doors. And number one is identifying what to sell. And that comes too from an inner knowledge of understanding your motivation to sell. So without making this too obvious, if you're planning to set up an online store, you're most likely going to plan to sell a specific product, a group of products, or maybe even a range of products. And some stores sell virtual or electronic goods like ebooks or online games. But I'm going to assume for the purpose of this webinar that most of you are going to be opening an online store to sell some type of physical or real world or tangible product. Okay, you know that you want to open an online store. So the next question is, what are you going to sell? And for some of you, the products that you plan to sell are an obvious choice. Perhaps you're an artist, or perhaps you're a local manufacturer who wants to sell your product lines. You may run a physical brick and mortar store and you want to offer the same products that are on your shelves, but to customers now around the world. And maybe you have contacts with or friends who know companies that have connections to the latest and greatest, like gadgets that everyone seems to want to buy. And for others, however, this is a very serious consideration. Perhaps you know that you want to open a store to make extra money. Maybe you want to clean out your garage, run it like that eBay movie that was on a few years ago. Or you want to quit your full-time job, perhaps, and become an entrepreneur. Kudos to you for sure. But when you're trying to decide what to sell from all the options out there, there are a few things that I think you should consider. So I would recommend that you do like a little self-inventory and try to identify what products that you know very, very well. Is there one specific product area where you have a special deep knowledge of the product range? And if so, half of your battle is already intact, because you'll know how to approach customers through your online store, because you'll be conveying your knowledge about those products. Another thing you maybe want to ask yourself are, what are some of the things that you like? Maybe you want to deal with products that you really enjoy, like those products that you use for a hobby. That could help inspire you to spend the time to build and run an online store just for those products alone. And then, do you actually maybe want to think about if you have access to a product that's not as accessible in other parts of the world? Okay, now I know where I live in Southwest Nova Scotia, that there's a manufacturer of excellent smoked salmon nearby, and I can get access to this quality smoked salmon. But there are people throughout the world who don't have that same ready access to the salmon that I do. So, there might be an opportunity to approach a local resource someday and resell their product on a national or a worldwide basis. So you may not necessarily own the product, but you could incorporate the excellent products of others when excuse me, when you want to consider migrating those products into your store as well. Okay. Some things that you want to consider when selling your own products is how are you going to ship your products to your customers? Okay, your interaction with your customers now is virtual, so you're going to have to ship your products to them. You'll need to have packing and shipping processes in place, which means you're going to have a station physically somewhere where you can package and then ship these products, or maybe you want to consider outsourcing packing and shipping to what's known as a fulfillment specialist. If you do the packing and the shipping yourself, make sure that you can easily locate all of your packing supplies, and you want to set up a system that identifies what you'll need for each order in terms of the materials, the boxes, the tape, and so on, because you don't want to keep reinventing the packing and shipping process each time you have an order to fill. So you need to have a smooth process in place for that. Another question to seriously consider is, can you legally mail your products to customers? Not everything can be bubble wrapped, put in a box, and sent on its way. We have cross-border laws here in Canada where certain products cannot cross borders. I'm hoping in time that we'll see some of these restrictions lifted. So some products, you have to be aware, do have different shipping rules and guidelines. For example, I don't think you can sell your wine across the border to the United States, as an example. I may be wrong, but there are some issues there. So please make sure that there are no legal barriers to shipping your product or any other special considerations for items that might not be liquid but might be perishable or dangerous. Also, too, you want to make sure that the manufacturer of your products, presuming you're not manufacturing them, you want to make sure that they will allow you to sell those goods online. Even though you may have, purchased them, you want to look at those agreements that you have in place. And maybe you don't have agreements in place with your manufacturer, but you should make sure that you are able to sell those goods online, because some of the major or even mid-range brands of consumer products worry about the effects of selling their products online. In some cases, they actually restrict their distributors and their retailers from offering their products in an online store, either at all or at certain price levels or quantities, because they want to control that customer experience. And you might find with companies like, I don't know, maybe Avon or Watkins or those sort of direct sellers might have very specific rules. So you will have to check with all of your manufacturers to make sure that you can sell those goods in your online store. And also, too, you want to make sure that the product that you ship can be easily and cost-effectively mailed to your customers. Think about this for a second. There were so many pet store owners that went out of business because they could not sell those 50-pound bags of dog food through the mail because of the exorbitant shipping fees that might have cost, per pound so much less for the consumer to purchase in quantity, but it quickly presented an issue for the seller when it came to packaging and mailing a 50-pound bag of dog food or cat food. Okay, so do make sure that your product really needs, can really be shipped, and that it's not, extremely heavy or complex to pack and ship. There was a client that I actually refused because they did concrete moldings and castings, and they did beautiful work especially from an garden artistic perspective, but they wanted to build their business model exclusively on online sales, and there's no way that they would have been viable because of the cost of shipping the products far outweighed what they were charging for their product, and it just ended up not being the right kind of model for sure. So do make sure that it's feasible to ship. Okay, and on a much larger scale, you're going to have to ask yourself what your online store is going to offer your customers to encourage the sale of these products as well, because of the days of if you build it they will come are not really here anymore. You're entering an existing market of online stores, and it's an extremely competitive marketplace. You're going to have to figure out what you're competing against, and you're going to have to decide what your online store needs, your hardcore needs, in order to accomplish success and survive. Okay, we'll talk about this a little bit later when we define the market and create the brand. So finding a distributor or a drop shipper. Now, the drop shipper might be an interesting concept for you. So we're going to talk about that, but let's first talk about the supply chain, and that is how a product makes it from start to finish. Because unless you're making all of your products and all of the tangible items and sourcing or making all of the materials that are needed to make your products, then you're part of the supply chain. First is the manufacturer. That is the company that actually makes the product or the raw materials that you use to make your product. Then we have the distributor, and that is when the manufacturer sells those large quantities of their product to the distributor, whose job then is to find retailers to carry the products. And then, of course, we have retailers. Those are the frontline stores that we all visit. The retailers themselves order the products from distributors. But in some cases, retailers can go directly to the manufacturer and buy it wholesale. And then, of course, the last part and the most important part of the supply chain is the customer. And this is the person who goes to the retailer to buy the product. Not very often do you find that customers can go directly to the distributor or even the manufacturer. So as a retailer, your job is to find the person who distributes these goods, or if possible, set up an account with the manufacturer directly so that you can stock and sell the goods back to your customers. Okay, so you need to do a bit of research, I think, to find the right source for this. And you want to take a look at the product itself. You want to take a really good look at that product and have, excellent inner knowledge of what this product does and its disadvantages as well. Okay, perhaps doing some internet research. Search engines like, Google are just a click away, of course, and go to the websites that talk about these products and look for ways to create retailer accounts, but look to at peer reviews and what people are saying about these products online. When the time comes again, go off and go to the trade shows. So if you're, selling objects or products from a large industry, there will be trade shows. The trade shows will come back. I have all the faith in the world. But go to them because they're specifically designed for retailers to not only find available manufacturers, but also to see what products are available. And then you can build that relationship and start ordering directly from those manufacturers. Okay? And also to talk to your friends and your family and your contacts on social media, including LinkedIn. I find LinkedIn to be an excellent, excellent resource to see, what works for a company that you might be thinking about purchasing from. So now a new and a bit of a special kind of a distributor is known as a drop shipper. It is a unique option for sure. A drop shipper is unique in that the typical supply chain doesn't apply really here. Drop shippers use retailers to find customers for their products, and then they send individual orders directly to the customer on behalf of the retailer. So using a drop shipper does have advantages for sure. So think about it. Now there's no upfront investment in your inventory, and that has been the bane of the existence of many retailers over the years of carrying the large inventory. So there's little or no upfront investment in the inventory. You only buy an item when a customer buys it from you. Not when a customer orders it from you, but when they buy it from you. Another advantage is that there's a wide variety of merchandise to offer. Like you can sell anything that a drop shipper has available without buying and storing it first. The product information and pictures are usually provided, so you get an official product pictures and descriptions to use in your online store. If you want to explore dropshipping a little bit more, Shopify has some great dropshipping tutorials and lessons, and I'd advise you to look into it there as well. Let me see, there's no packing or shipping on your end, and I think besides not carrying inventory, the fact that you don't have to pack or ship these products, but sell to your customers when they purchase from you is just to me a godsend. Now, drop shipping has been very, very profitable for a lot of people. It's a very unique option for sure, but like every good thing, it does have its disadvantages as well. So it is your own brand on the line. You have made the sale and you're the one who's responsible for the sale going smoothly. Any dropshipper's mistakes make you look bad and you have to fix that problem. And dropshippers have been known to take the money and run. You pay them to ship out the item, but they sometimes take the money and never do it. You want to look for a company with an extensive history and a reputable business. So there's a lot to consider when choosing a drop shipper. Any misstep that could be innocent on their part, if the product is out or troublesome, could be presented as fraud for sure. So you do want to be careful because you cannot control this experience. You can't know how the customers are receiving their orders, and you can't handle most special requests. Even if you give the dropshipper like custom boxes or literature to include, you are relying on another company for the future of your store. Okay, so I would suggest that if you're interested in dropshipping, give it some serious thought for sure, but maybe you want to approach different manufacturers to see if they have a list of recommended dropshippers, and you can always visit like the Better Business Bureau to see if anybody has had problems or reported your potential dropshipper for any sort of negative experience. So your market, knowing your ideal market, that is just key. You need to know who you're hoping to reach with your online store. So you need to ask yourself exactly that. Who are you hoping to reach with your online store? Are you trying to be a general merchandise provider like Walmart? Are you trying to specialize in one specific product line like maybe surfboards, pool tables, comic books? Or are you trying to reach a certain demographic, perhaps to become the one-stop destination for seniors or accountants or, teenagers? When you figure out what market you want to go after with your online store, you want to ask yourself a few very key pertinent questions, such as who is your ideal customer? Again, are you trying to approach, the tween market? Are you trying to approach households that make 50,000 or more and live only in the suburbs? You want to find that biggest target market for the products that you're choosing to sell, or the target market that you feel is being underserved by the current stores who are selling your type of product. Okay? What do you do differently from existing online stores? So what is your uniqueness? Because knowing your market and your competition will help you determine how to reach these customers and avoid or limit spending money on reaching other market groups. And then you want to ask yourself, why should someone buy from you instead of someone else? So do you offer lower prices? Do you offer better selection, better service? Do you have a unique twist on the product, or something else entirely? And, once you open and operate your online store, you may find that your initial plans or your target market isn't the best choice for you. You want to be flexible and you want to watch for trends in your market because new opportunities may present themselves at any moment. So just don't hop from trend to trend to trend and provide an inconsistent experience for your customers. Okay, you really need to know your ideal market. Otherwise, building your brand will seem a little loosey-goosey. Because when people hear about your company's brand, many of them quickly think about a company's logo or even their trademark image. After all, you look at the distinctive way that Coca-Cola is written. You look at the golden arches of McDonald's and you look at that Nike swoosh. Those images are branded into our minds as representing those companies. But a company's brand is much more than a logo. In essence, a company's brand is the total image that it presents to the world in terms of what the company represents and offers. This includes the expectation that a customer has about interacting with that brand. The expectation of trust, of customer service, and the quality of service and the quality of their products. Okay? So when it comes to creating a brand for your own company, you need to ask yourself, when a new or an existing customer thinks of my online store, what do I want that person to think or feel? And I'm not just talking about the focus of your store, like, the features being extensive selection or lowest prices or high level of customer service. None of that. That does affect your brand, but what I'm talking about is how people perceive your company. Do they look at you as being stable, fun, homegrown, reliable, flexible? Okay, you think about that. It's key, because once you set that brand expectation, that everything you do should reflect that brand. When you design a logo or have it designed for you, you want to be the fun young store, for example, you will use colors and images that reflect that. Your emails, your website language, and your policies will reflect that. Even your inventory selection, your product photos, how you display your marketing, or how you use marketing to display your products, all of that is going to reflect your brand image in some way. Okay? And that doesn't mean just stamping your logo everywhere. That means building the whole concrete package that represents, look, we're a fun, energetic company, or we are a serious law firm, or whatever is appropriate for you. Your brand image needs to be in your mind when you engage in any communication, marketing, or interaction with your customers, including your employees, because they are a reflection of your business. Okay? Basically everyone. And if you don't represent your brand image accurately, then who will? So do keep consistent with that. Because after a while, if you're consistent in how you project your brand, your customers and everyone else will begin to associate those qualities with your business, whether they order something from you or not. Okay, so make sure that whatever you do represents you and your brand accurately. Red Bull is a great example. Okay, they're a high-end energetic company. You think of how that brand makes you feel, and they encapsulate energy or activity and high energy quite well, so naturally they sell high energy drinks. After a while, if you're consistent with how you project your brand, your customers and everyone else will begin to associate that qualities with your business. Okay? So that is really, really important. That's also going to help you when you choose to make a name for yourself. When you choose a domain name, now we talked about this earlier, we talked about the construct of the store's domain name, but now it's time to do some research and to find out if your name is available. I'd recommend, going to whois.com or even godaddy.com. Do some research, see if your domain name for your store has already been registered, but don't purchase it yet. Make sure that you correlate that with, say, your social media handles as well. We always like to have some consistency across the board there. Sometimes you might have to make an offer to an existing owner for a domain name as well. It can be very pricey. I do caution you there. I negotiated one client's domain name for a .com extension. They started at $15,000, and we got it down to just over four and a half, I think, like $4,500 that we paid for a domain name. But it was pretty important because it represented the company name precisely, and it was an important asset for them to acquire, but not everybody has that luxury for sure. Do you need a .com extension? I think you do, because when it comes to online stores, .com is the gold standard here. There are other exceptions that will work because a website is a website. It'll load regardless of the extension, but when your potential customers go to type your domain name, they will instinctively use a .com, okay? And if your domain name is taken, and if you can't afford to buy it back from somebody, think about other ways that you may wish to convey your name online. Maybe you want to focus on keywords instead of the name. Maybe you want to focus on the types of products that you sell. Pick a name that's obvious as to what you sell. Try adding words like the, my, or the real in front of your domain name. Okay, but do be careful that you do not assign names that are too long for people to remember. Do not use copyrighted names. Don't go for weird, bizarre names like widgets with a Z.com or creative with the with the number 8 in the middle. That always bugged me. I never knew if I should spell out the word 8 or type in the number 8. This is a huge pet peeve of mine. Don't add too many hyphens or underscores, because think about it, most of us, 60+% are looking at websites for the first time using our smartphone, and it's really, really awkward to type in underscores and dashes. So do be careful with that. And moving right along, we want to take a look at when you choose a provider for your e-commerce solution, you want to make sure that they are a reputable provider. You either outsource it through, say, a development company like Atlantic Online, and we can source that for you. If you want to do it yourself, you want to make sure that they have good support in place. You want to take a look very carefully at the type of contract that you might have to sign with them, and you want to know what their growth plan is as well. So it can be tricky when you bring in a third-party organization to work with, and that's why a lot of companies do, and I don't mean to keep toting my horn here, but that's why a lot of companies work with us, because we can point people in the right direction before it comes time to sign those contracts and to engage in any sort of long-term arrangement with companies who will ultimately be handling your back-end e-commerce infrastructure for you. Okay. Next, and I think regardless of whether you choose, a tool like WordPress WordPress or Squarespace or even, gosh, Wix to create a small online store, you need to have solid store policies in place. And those policies are the rules that govern how your online business is going to operate. The three most common policies that every online store should have in place before opening are the return policy, the shipping policy, and the privacy policy. In fact, I think in some places in law, certainly Google law, where you have a visible privacy policy for your customers' information. Okay, so let's talk about each of these in detail because they are important. The return policy is what happens if your customer is not absolutely thrilled. Well, ideally, every customer who receives an order from you will be absolutely thrilled. But some issues do occur, and they can come back to hurt you in terms of repeat customer purchases if you don't have a good return policy. Okay, customers can order products. They are ordering products based on pictures and descriptions, and when those items are mailed to them, there will be times when a customer wants to return the purchase. So it's really important to establish your return policy up front before ever taking an order, so that your customers know what their options are before they place the order. And creating that return policy after the first problem has occurred is not the best way to run an online store. So what are the things that your return policy has to cover? Well, first of all, you have to ask and answer, do you offer returns? It seems like a simple answer, but you can be very specific here. Yes or no on all returns. No returns on perishable, secondhand, or deeply discounted merchandise. No returns on specific brand names or product lines or groups of products. It's really going to have to match with your business operations. And will you only offer returns on items that are damaged or not working correctly? Or will you take returns for any reason? For example, like the buyer might have changed their mind. And what is that return window? Basically, how long does the customer have to start the return process? And many online stores have varying levels of return windows, anywhere from 7 to 14 to 30 days or more. Okay, so you want to make sure that your policies state clearly when the return window begins, okay, whether it's from the moment they ordered it or from the day they received it. So that's really important, and that's a respectful thing to do, to convey all of this information to your customers. That's going to help create a better working relationship with your customers for sure. If you do accept returns, you want to know who's going to pay for that return shipping. You may stipulate this in part of your policy, and it may depend on why the item is being returned. So if you made a mistake with the order, obviously you pay. But if the buyer changed their mind, they pay. And you want to set this expectation up front because many buyers assume that an online store will take care of everything. No. Doesn't work that way for everyone. There might be some, big box stores that have done that, but a lot of the small mom and pop stores can't afford that. Oftentimes there's a restocking fee, oftentimes when you receive an item back, there's an effort required to reprocess that item, and known as a restocking fee. So some stores will charge you a restocking fee, and that's something that you might want to consider. So you'll have to assess what the effort is on your part and what you have to do in terms of time and resources to process an item once it's returned. And if that's costing you time, money, or resources, then that might justify charging a restocking fee. And then how does the buyer send the item back? Some sellers will provide a return shipping labels and then have the shipper pick up the package back from the buyer's house. I recall purchasing some goods that did that. What was it? Something from Perlator. Anyway, the Perlator labels were included, and I thought that was kind of nice. I didn't need them, but it was kind of nice. Kind of expensive on their end, but I think it's only paid for when you use them. But it's a nice service for sure. And, some online stores will cover the cost of sending the item back, but you really want to be upfront with your customers on this. And if all else fails, you're not quite sure of, what to write for your return policy. We have some experience in that, obviously, but take a look to it what your competitors' return policies are for stores that are in your product area. And, you'll get a sense of what's normal for your for your types of products. The next is the shipping. You need to have a very clear shipping policy, and you have an obligation timeline to determine when items are shipped, because that's going to lend to the customer success for sure. You need to ship an order within an expected time frame, and you should be upfront and tell your customers this. I can tell you that I waited, oh my gosh, 5 months for a product that I ordered, and obviously I was not a very happy camper during the process, and I wasn't very impressed when the product arrived 5 months later than the 3-month window that I was told that it would arrive within. 3 months I thought was a long time, but it comes from the other side of the world. You have to clear customs, etc. Which brings me to my point that you should know what the process is for shipping, and the process assigned to a timeline will help you determine how long of a time frame your customer should wait. So you want to be upfront about that, because when you don't provide an expectation on the time frame, your customers are left wandering, and they're left hanging, and they're saying, gosh, are they going to honor my commitment to purchase from them? Okay. So it's really important that if you cannot meet the expected time frame, that you get in touch with your customer and you give them the opportunity to receive a refund as well. So do avoid a lot of negative experience with your customers by having a solid shipping policy in place. And then the privacy policy. We have them on every website. And, every store, every website has to have it, but every online store has to have a privacy policy, and it has to be clearly linked and available from the homepage. It lets customers know the basics of how the information is stored, information that is personal or private to the customer. You have to be very specific in your privacy policy by disclosing what information you are actually collecting. Are you just collecting, say, personal data? Are you collecting their name, address, phone number, and email? Or are you collecting other demographic data like their age, their gender, their occupation, and so on? I mean, that's personal thing. So you want to be upfront about how you're keeping their financial information on file as well, okay? So that's really, really important. And you need to disclose how you're storing and protecting that data. So you need to let people know that you are securely storing and protecting their data so that it's not only accurate but also secure from unauthorized use. And sometimes we have to share this data. So you have to let them know who else can see their information. And these are the 3 core pillars of a privacy document. So you need to tell them if you're sharing the data with any of your partners or third-party providers, okay? And when it comes to sharing that information, you have to give your consumers the right to block their information or to opt out at any time from their information being shared with anyone other than your online store. You have to provide very clear instructions on how the consumer can opt out, etc., or how they can see what information you have in store for them. So having that privacy policy is critical. And in terms of how well it plays with Google, Google will penalize your website in terms of the search engine rankings if you do not have a solid privacy plan in place. Now let's get on to building the online store. These are the steps that you have to go through in order to construct that solid foundation. Now, when brick and mortar retailers start building their stores, they typically worry about like racks and fixtures to hold their products and floor plans and visible signs for your front window and all of the other physical concerns unique to a physical store. But online store owners worry about something similar but entirely different. We worry about making sure the right template is in place, the right theme, the right color palettes. We worry about online payment, online shipping, and tax options. In the end, owners of all types of stores want one thing. We all want a clean, intuitive, and functional store that makes it simple and pleasing for customers to shop while appearing professional and safe. So in this section, I'm going to talk about the foundation for any online store owner in terms of what they need before they, release the store to the public virtually, and how one should construct a solid foundation. We'll talk about designing the online store. Okay, so here comes the fun part, and that is designing your online store. It's what we consider the fun part anyway. A common mistake that many online store owners make is either rushing through the design process without considering how to really lay out the elements of their store, or trying to make design decisions on the fly while worrying about other building steps. Okay, so this does take a little bit of time if you can, but follow these steps. And this is a process that we go through for all of our clients before we begin laying out a sitemap, and it's an exercise that I recommend you do as well. So number one is to map the pages for your online store. So take out a piece of paper or Microsoft Word, whatever works, and make a list of all the pages that you think your store should have. Now, don't forget about pages like category homepages, your policy pages, contact information. Maybe you have an FAQ section, okay? List all of your pages that you envision. And then go off and study your competition. And I don't mean copy your competition by any means. I don't advocate that. But study what your competition is doing. Go to similar online stores and see what they have and see what you like about their stores. Because chances are, if you like something in their store arrangement, typically your customers will as well if you're from the same industry. It'll help you identify things that should be in your store. So maybe you want to add some new items to that list that you developed in the first phase. And then go through this role reversal thing. Pretend that you are the customer and do a walkthrough of your list. So using your list, pretend that you're the customer and note the order and the number of pages that you see during your various scenarios. For example, if you want to order product X, first you would see the home page, then you'd probably see the category page, and then the product access page, and then the checkout, and so on. And if you go through enough scenarios, you should visit every page on your list at least once. And if you cannot come up with a scenario in which a page from your list is not visited, then you have to ask yourself why that page is on your site. So this is a tool that helps you, and this is a methodology that helps you experience your online store from your customer's advantage, because really, after all, it's about giving the best experience to your customer, and that's what's going to help bring your customer back, and it's going to help define a long-term relationship with your customer for sure. Then we want to look at establishing the category structure. How are your customers going to navigate through your online store? So let's, excuse me, when you walk through a grocery store, you see category names in every aisle, right? You know canned fruit from frozen food. When your customers browse your online store, they need to see category names as well to know how to navigate your online aisles. It won't hurt to sit down and make a category list first before the actual build, okay? Whether you're building this yourself or whether you're working with a provider, and this is a necessary thing that you have to do. It's known as assigning like a taxonomy categorization structure to all of the products. So it has to have that category system in place. Here are some tips that can help you through when defining your category structures. You want to use the language of your products and your customers. So pick terms and groupings that your customers expect to see. And that sometimes is not necessarily the actual name of your product. Make your category names independent of any promotions, okay? You don't want to change your category structure often, so don't create temporary categories like Mother's Day ribbons or something like that. You sell ribbons, and that's all there is. You don't want to have too many layers of subcategories either. Any individual product should be available within 3 clicks of the home page. Beyond that, you risk losing your customer. If they have to henpeck throughout your site to try to find something that is causing your customer to have a negative experience, even if it's a few seconds, and that's something we have to avoid at all costs, for sure. And one way to avoid that is to try to like cross categorize your items. Several shopping carts allow for you to assign multiple categories from one item. So for example, if you sell games, you might have a genre for Star Wars board games. Well, when people click on a Star Wars board game, they might see other products that are assigned to the Star Wars category and see the action figures as well. So you can try to cross-categorize items in that way, and that in essence can lead to more sales for you, but also provides a more convenient shopping system for your clients as well. And if you end up with a lot of categories, you'll probably have to specify which categories are always visible on your navigation. Okay, so for this, you would of course pick the most popular categories to make it all easier for your customers to find it. Okay. Then, once you have your categories in place, it's time to begin loading your products, and that means populating your online store catalog with the items. Back to the grocery store analogy again, they put the shelves up first, then they assign categories to them, and then they fill them with the bottles and the cans and the boxes. Well, in your store, in your online store, once you've created the category structure, then you can add products to fill the categories, and you can have several methods for bringing products into your store. You can add one at a time. You can have like a product form. You can have an upload inventory option, or you can have like an import feature. So it really depends on the type of technology that is being used. In our case, we have a shared Google Drive that we use with our clients, and in that shared Google Drive is a product catalog, and both the clients and us have access to that, of course. So the client will make changes to their catalog in the file that's stored on the Google Drive. We'll pick that up, and then we'll upload to the servers for our clients. And those are for some of our larger end clients where the products are, 100-fold, and sometimes more than that, depending on the categories and subcategories. So that is a really nice feature that we have developed for our clients. But there are other ways for smaller installations where it can be just as efficient as well. Okay. What did I need to say about this? Oh yes, don't try to put too many keywords when you're describing your products, because the practice of keyword stuffing actually hurts your search engine rankings. So product descriptions are important, but make sure that it's appropriate, and we help you with that, obviously. And you want to specify shipping options. And again, back to that, it goes beyond the packing process, and we have to balance what is best for you and your customer. So you want to determine what shipping carriers you're going to use, and this can be determined through any type of plugin that we can assign. Like Canada Post has an awesome plugin. It calculates the rate based on the weight and the delivery scope as well. Okay, and you want to figure out how many shipping options you can offer to your customers as well. The less you offer, the easier for your packaging and shipping. I'll let you know now that you want to reduce the effort, especially when you have volume sales going out the door. But you want to make it such that it's balanced between your needs and your customers' needs as well. And sometimes you want to calculate a flat shipping rate for your customer. And that will work if the majority of your products are the same size and weight. If, however, you're selling products that differ in scope, then you might have to look at different shipping options for sure. Okay. And then we have the most important part, I think, is being able to accept the credit card. So it's really important that you understand the steps that your system will go through, regardless of what kind of system you use, when it comes time to accepting payments through credit cards. Okay. So let's cover those steps now. When a customer submits an order and makes a payment, the very first thing that happens is that the customer provides their credit card number, and this requires that your shopping cart program offers the customer a secure form in which to input their information, and that includes their address, their shipping details, and the credit card expiration date. So that is the shopping cart piece of software that I referred to earlier. The shopping cart software then securely sends that credit card information to the payment gateway. We spoke about that earlier. This is that virtual system, that virtual machine that's running in the background that connects you with the financial institutions that process the credit card and then ultimately releases the funds. Okay. Usually having that merchant account we spoke of earlier comes with a recommended payment gateway, and that is what you input during the store setup phase. Then the payment gateway securely sends the information to the payment processor. Okay, a lot of steps happening in the background here. But the payment, it's important to note that at this point, the payment processor is talking to the bank or the financial institution that issued the buyer's credit card. So basically they're saying, okay, Mary Jane wants to buy something for $50. Will you please release the funds for this purchase? I don't think it asks so nicely, but that's basically what's happening here. And then the fourth step is then that processor will send back the results to the payment gateway. This information will indicate whether the charge was approved or declined. So this happens like lickety-split really fast in the background, but this is the process that's happening. If, however, if their card was declined, usually a specific reason, like a decision code or an error code, is provided so that you have an idea why the charge was not accepted. All while respecting, client privacy, of course. The fifth step in knowing these steps is that the payment gateway then notifies your shopping cart software, okay, that front-end piece that clients use to enter their first part of their information, the purchasing information. That shopping cart information software is then notified of the decision, so then your purchase can be finalized. Okay, so once the shopping cart software gets the results, it's either going to display an order confirmation screen with an order number. And you don't have to worry about generating that. Your shopping cart software will do that for you. It will generate and display your receipt, confirm the shipping details, and it will display maybe even an error message along with the decision code or the text so that the buyer knows why the order didn't go through. So if the payment was approved, we're on the final step. The payment processor then sends the money to your merchant account. These steps usually take a matter of seconds, so hopefully your buyer isn't waiting too long for the decision. Now, sometimes the amount of time from when the money actually appears in your bank account can be a few days. I have had, in the very beginning of my e-commerce implementation career, I have had clients wait 9 days for turnover. Fortunately, that has improved dramatically. It's now down to a couple of days, sometimes by end of day, from the time that the payment processor finishes the payment and deposits it into your bank account. So think of all the connection and the touch points in the background when it leaves the the payment processor and the gateway to the time that it actually receives the money to your bank account or sends the money to your bank account. Sometimes that is dependent on your bank as well. So it can take a couple of hours or sometimes a couple of days, depending when they do their batch processing of incoming payments. But at this point, you're pretty much safe in knowing that the payment is secure for sure. Okay. You can also think about offering additional forms of payment as well, because some people do not have credit cards, even to this day. You can always do e-transfer. That can be done over the phone. Once it's confirmed that the funds have been received, then you can send out the product for your customer. Customers sometimes like to use PayPal. That is an alternative to using a credit card. Some people just have their PayPal connect direct from their bank account and can send you either their payment through PayPal. In addition to PayPal and e-transfers, Google Checkout is kind of cool. And then also there's still the standby of checks and money orders. So there are some other options besides a checking or a credit card account through your website for purchases for sure. Finally, we are at the point where we can look at launching your store. I know this has been a long webinar and I've gone through a lot of things, and a lot of it's been theoretical and somewhat dry, but it's really, really important to get the foundational pieces in place because you want your success to be, you want your launch rather to be the most success that it can be for sure. So the final checklist when launching your online store is to make sure that your inventory is final and complete, and do a thorough check of all of your web pages and make sure that they are complete and that they're linking to each other. Do that final check on your contact information, because from the time you started your store to the launch, some things may have changed. And make sure that you can back up a copy of your entire store. And that's offered through your web hosting company as well. So that is so very important. Marketing your store. Even though you've exhausted a lot of resources, time, and effort to get to this point, I can assure you, my friend, that the majority of your work has just begun. Because marketing your store, like any product, is the long game. We can talk about how you can get online search engines to recognize you. I think it's worth you taking some time to learn about emailing and using it as a tool, because you can email potential and current customers about your store, and that's a great way to keep your relationship with your clients going because you have a captured audience. Also, too, you have to use social media to make your sales, and another great way is to blog your way. Blogging shows your authority, if you will, and it shows your knowledge about a product. But in terms of the search engine, you really need to know the formula for search engine optimization. And when you search for something on Google or Yahoo, Do you ever wonder why it picks maybe 10 sites to show up on the first page of the search results? It's because Google's using a very special formula to make that happen. And the study of how to best perform in internet searches and get a high ranking is called search engine optimization. And the main thing to know is that SEO, or search engine rankings, are largely measured by 3 factors, and some of which you directly can control. The very first one is content. If all else is equal, a website that has 100 pages is going to outrank one with 5 pages. So augment your online store with articles about your products. Again, this goes back to blogging, where you can show your authority. Add product reviews, and make sure that each category has its own landing page. That's really, really important. Having incoming links shows authority as well, or it heightens your authority online, because it shows the more people who are linking to your website, the more popular your website is. Other company pages are not going to link to yours unless there's value. So, if 100 sites are linking into like your comic store, Google is saying, oh, this must be a good site. So you try to get some recommendations from trusted sites and engage in online conversations, or have other people's stores, especially your manufacturers, link to yours as well. And keywords. Using the same keyword too many times on a page is considered bad. If you use too few, then there's no sense in what's important on the page. Make sure that any specific keywords for your products are on the page. Make sure that it's present on your title page, in the background meta tags, and the alt tags for all of your images as well. And that will help to elevate your position in search. So that is the organic way of getting recognized online through Google search engine and using search engine optimization. Alternatively, another way to bring people into your store is through paid advertisements. If you don't naturally show up in the first few pages of main search results, maybe there's just like so much competition out there, you can start paying to show up along the edge of the screen. I'm sure you've seen those paid advertisements. They are widely used by small businesses. Like sites like Google offer AdWords, like Google Ads, to help better position you within search as well. And it gives you instant visibility, and you can, have a decent budget assigned to that and see some good results as well. With Google AdWords, be aware that it's quite different than Facebook ads, because with Google ads, people are actively seeking your service, and therefore paid search ads will more likely appear when somebody is searching specifically for your product or your service. So I need a plumber, so show me plumbers in my area. Whereas with Facebook ads, they are more like passive seekers, and ads are displayed to the passive timeline scrollers, and it's based on the demographic data that Facebook has on each of their profiles. For example, small business owners who are scrolling their Facebook timeline are often shown self-help marketing programs, so ads for that. You want to position your products appropriately for passive seekers on Facebook ads, or active seekers, depending on your industry, of course, and what your service is and what your products are. Not to dismiss email marketing, because it speaks to a captive audience, and email works great. You can have autoresponders. When somebody signs up for your list, it'll automatically send an email to somebody based really on what you set up. Like when they join your website, you're going to automatically send them out a coupon. You can send a series of welcome emails giving them incentives to purchase. You can, if they share their birth date with you, you can send them their special birth date coupon code. There are all kinds of things that you can set up in an autoresponder way within within email, and MailChimp is a great tool for that. We've outgrown MailChimp. MailChimp will allow up to 2,000 subscribers for free, but only one list right now. They changed that, so we've outgrown that. We're actually using a product called Sendinblue, and that allows for multiple list management, and we can send out, I think, up to 20,000 emails a day. So that works a little better for us because we've scaled beyond what MailChimp offers, but it is still a fine service for a lot of people and works extremely well from the free platform. And it does allow you to send newsletters as well. So newsletters are a nice way to show your audience new products. It's a nice way to draw people back to your website where you talk about your products, maybe on the blog where you do product reviews. And it's just a nice way to communicate with your audience, because think about it, you have their email address and people trust you enough to give you their email address. And that's a nice way to have a relationship online where we can't speak to everybody saying the same thing at once. We do so through newsletters. So they're still quite popular. And of course, excuse me, I was just having a drink of water. You have to be where your customers are. Social media is where your customers are. Facebook has an awesome store integration tool. It works really, really well with WooCommerce on the WordPress platform. So there's a really nice plugin that anytime you have a product on your store, you can cross-promote it to your Facebook page. Be careful here, however. Make sure that you don't want to overload your Facebook feed by constantly pushing or promoting all of your store products. Just pick some of your best sellers or your products that are relevant to what your customers maybe are interested in through Facebook. Don't be too salesy or too, promotion-y on social media, because you need a conversation when you're pushing through social media for sure. And I mentioned blogging earlier. Blogging is a great way to build rapport with your customers, but it's also great for search engines because it's showing Google that there's authentic content being created on your site, and that's helping to elevate your standing within search as well. So that's really, really important. And it's going to force you to keep your website current, and it's forcing you to keep your online stores current. So it's a great way to talk about new product reviews, and it's a great way to educate people on what's happening there. Okay. So that, my friend, concludes this lengthy hour-and-a-half discussion. I'm sorry if I rambled. I tend to do that, but I just have so much information that I'd like to share with you. So that concludes the pre-recorded part of this webinar, and I want to thank you very much for your time today. If you are interested in speaking further with me, then please reach out. My email address is there on screen. We're online at atlanticonline.ca, and we do answer our phone when we're not on airplane mode. And thank you so much for your time today. Okay.